Hello Internet, I'm Jackie Fox. KADAJ is now out on JP, which means he's about a month away for us over here in Global. And after taking a look at this guy, he's actually relatively simple. He reminds me a lot of Sephiroth, except in a way that I think makes him a lot more compatible with newer units. In fact, he pairs with a number of them very well. Looking at his TMR, master ability, and dream ability, while some of this stuff is pretty interesting, especially the decreased human killer, which is going to be helpful for stopping follow-up attacks, which are typically non-elemental, and therefore something that's going to get through this guy's defenses a lot easier. There's not really a lot here. I mean, I guess this is a good next generation TMR to have for a buddy buff, but it's not my favorite. It does help add things to people's kit that is interesting. I'm appreciating a lot of these abilities. Like, I'm really appreciating Oldoa's TMR for this. And this is a buddy buff style, so it really spreads it across the field. That could be very powerful and very interesting. But at the same time, a lot of newer units have two kind of must-have abilities that feel like they're stronger than this, and KADAJ certainly does. So let's hesitate no less and move on into stats, because relatively easy picture before passive. 7,500 HP is a lot. That is comparable to most tanks in the game at this moment. He's not really a tank. That's just kind of where the new bar is set for newer units. This is where all of our brawlers have been. But that's definitely going to compound all of the other factors we're going to talk about to make him a unit that has a very high effective HP. His attack is 811, which is massive. He has a little bit of basic defense, just a little bit of spirit. He is very fast. This is actually almost comparable with Spring Celestial Joom, so very powerful in the base stats there. Dexterity and luck are okay. He has a decent amount of accuracy, just base, a little bit of extra critical rate. His resistances are generally positive 10 to 15%, with the exception of piercing. And, you know, kind of the 20% fire and negative 10% to lightning that you would expect. He is 50% resistant to confusion and to stop, which are both pretty useful. 10% to immobilize, which is meh, but you know, it is what it is. And so far, like, other than the kind of the stat ceiling being higher, it's okay. You know, his resistances are relevant, but usually they have been. They've been pretty on point lately for most characters. There's only one passive here that I actually really like for him, unfortunately. I'm not sure which one you use out of the rest of them. It's probably this one, but I'm not entirely sure. This one could be really good in certain situations, but this skill right here is going to give him 40 slash attack resistance penetration. So keep that in mind later. 24% attack and 15% all elemental resistance. I'm, again, not really sure what you pair with this, but keep that in mind because that's really important for him. It's both one of the ways he can't penetrate people's defenses better with the rest of his kit is with slash attack resistance, and then that elemental resistance is going to stack with other things. Another thing, I don't think his counters are good. Like, this is like 2B came with this back in the day. This is not good. This is so vanilla. Like, this is year one counter, okay? I mean, yes, it's a decent one. Reflex was also a year one counter, but like, I'm not excited about any of them really. AP recovery skill recovers 15 AP on a kill, which is actually more AP than the skill costs. Especially if you have an AP reduction, this could actually build you up AP, which is pretty cool. But also pretty basic. First buff here, this is a selfish buff. It's going to give him re-raise, decrease AP consumption 4 turns by 30%, and then slash attack resistance penetration up by 40 for 4 turns for self. So now we're up to 80 with passive. Also, all elemental resistance 20% for 4 turns. So for 4 turns, we have 80% slash resistance penetration, as well as 35% resistance to all elements. That's going to be as high as 55% for fire and as low as 25% for lightning, and then with any other modifiers that are coming in because of the build. Also, looking at kind of the rest of his kit, it all tends to be a little bit plain, so I'm going to skip this skill right here. We can talk about it later. But I want to talk about his next buff, and this is his buddy buff, possibly the first one he's going to use, and maybe the one he's going to use most often. Increase human killer 30% for 4 turns when attacking with physical attacks for allies. So, this is going to make your whole team slap. And this is already something that we see on, oddly enough, this is on and another water unit, oddly enough, also, but like one of the 2 normal rarity units in the game. And it's kind of a joke that they gave him something this powerful on one of his buffs if you commit to him. Still not necessarily the best unit this is on, but this isn't that buff. This does so many other things. He gets 42% increased speed, haste for 4 turns, human resistance 25% for 4 turns. I would say out of the nearly, I think it's like 300 characters in this game, that probably 97 to 98% of them are human. So that's just resistant, that's general damage resistance, 25% for 4 turns. That's general damage resistance of 25% for 4 turns. This is probably one of the strongest defensive buffs in the game right now. And that's after we've already, on this other buff, increased all elemental resistance by 20%. These are just ridiculous. The fact that he stacks them together in 2 buffs is nutty. But also, on top of all of that, it's going to add 3 things to all of these other attacks, right? So they're a little bit boring and bland by themselves, but just imagine each of them having this effect as well. Physical damage reduction 15% for 3 turns on hit. Also, 20% critical rate down for 4 turns, and dispels auto restore for 4 turns. So all of your skills are going to dispel auto restore, they're going to reduce critical rate by 20, and they're going to just cause your physical damage to go down by 15%. So, and that's in addition to him just walking around with this massive amount of human resistance. So let's go back to this more basic skill. 200% mod, plus 30% hit chance. So this is going to be good for for guaranteed hit evasion units. This is also good for people who maybe have a lot of single target resistance. I recommend you pair him with someone who can deal with single target resistance, because he can't, but this would give him an AoE option if he's just running into trouble with that. And then it's going to do all of those other things, which is great. So then we've got this skill, select up to 2 targets, really mad range on this one. Breaks physical barriers and 200% mod, plus it's going to be dispelling their auto restore. By the way, this is going to be really bad for Ashen King mod. This is going to be a major problem for him, and in a way that only really I want to say it's Veritas of the Winds TMR. I mean, definitely that works against him, because it'll just turn off auto restore entirely instead of just dispelling it. But this will also break some of his abilities, and his ability to cause silence specifically. The other skill, same mod, 200%, also has 100% hit chance. So if they're way too evasive for you, but they don't have guaranteed hit evasion, this makes sure you're able to hit them. Select up to 2 targets. Now, I didn't mention this, but the last skill was a 2-hitter. This is only a 1-hitter. But that 1 hit is going to, before dealing damage, reduce defense for 3 turns by 80%. Not by 80, by 80%. Which honestly is often lower than 80. Really, this number makes it look bigger The reduction, though, is pretty big. Like, even if you have 100 defense, now you only have 20, and I'm hitting you very hard. And you're not dodging it, most likely. And neither is your friend, because this hits up to 2 targets, but also it's going to dispel your auto restore to increase your crit rate and decrease your physical damage for the next 4 turns. This guy has quite the kit. One of his other issues, though, because he has one really good passive, but the rest of them are kind of eh. His subjobs are also kind of eh, in the same way that his counter is kind of eh. But Berserk here is pretty helpful. There's a chaining move, but I think this is probably the most interesting thing in his sub kit. For Strider, he already has good buffs. This isn't great, and you usually want to turn it off even when you like it. Chaining skill, but bad. Debuffing skill, but probably not great either. The ability to break physical barriers and remove courage, but at an incredibly close range. Also, the modifier keeps up with the other thing in his kit. I think it's probably the most usable thing here, but he definitely has ways to do all of that already. Doesn't necessarily need backups, and doesn't necessarily need them in close range like this. Especially when, this hits 3 people at max, but that's a really, unlikely scenario. It's unlikely that this even hits 2 people, but it could. The other one almost always will because of its much superior range. Speaking of superior range, there's also an archer subjob, but another way to inflict Berserk, maybe at a longer range. The buffs are maybe better here. Defense penetration isn't really important when you can do what he can do to defense. This is maybe one of the cooler things. It really kind of combos in with this Berserk because you can't run his potentially better Berserk skill. But a lot of things have haste these days, so getting up to a 225 mod is pretty cool. It's going to keep up with everything but his LB, and also decreases AP by 20 when performing a critical hit from a decent range, and it's a 3-hit skill, so this is going to be another chaining option for him. But one of the big draws for this character is the ability to, with his LB, which is essentially Sephiroth's LB, but not quite as good. Which is kind of odd to say, but that is such a stellar and terrifying LB that makes up for Sephiroth's kit being honestly a little bit vanilla as well. Just being a lot of damage, honestly. This is still very welcome and still one of the reasons that people are going to be pulling this character. It removes auto revive and courage before dealing damage, 240 mod, biggest AoE you can get. Plus 30% hit chance instead of guaranteed, and auto restore AP 5% for 3 turns instead of decrease AP consumption, which is what Sephiroth got. So very comparable to that. We should also look at his sword. 180 attack is alright. Defensive 8, initial AP 20, pretty cool. Elemental chain resistance, another general type of defense for him, another layer to his onion, so to speak. Very helpful here. But this is mostly defensive, as you can see. Slash attack 15, that's alright, but this isn't necessarily a very offensive katana for him, but definitely one that rounds out his defenses and adds layers to them. Then looking at characters that go particularly well with him, you've got Tifa, who is a really good first line bait to bring in maybe him and June behind, or any other strong water unit to bait in some of the strong fire teams, maybe Volke led teams, that kind of thing. But also you could put KADAJ out front and have King Mont behind him and maybe another Earth unit, and have a really powerful way of wiping out lightning teams as well. But really, any of these 4 units combined with KADAJ, especially if you can utilize the elemental synergy with June, are going to be a really good combination, because these are next generation units with next generation stats. And all of them have really good synergies, either being of the same element or of complementary adjacent elements that have strategic bonuses together. And then there's also Sephiroth. I mean, he has a lot of the qualities of Sephiroth naturally. It's pretty good design, I would say. And Sephiroth complements him fairly well. It gives him a little bit of redundancy in some of the things that he does, and they're also very similar in that they're also like generally resistant to damage. Or so when you get both of those two characters together, you build the core of a team that can take on really any element. And there are other ways of boosting this, like even King Mont, oddly enough, might be really good for this. Mercy's Grace just boosts all elemental resistances as well. No, that's like a KADAJ's thing. But I do think that, you know, obviously KADAJ is going to be good with katana teams. Obviously KADAJ is going to be good with the other two Sephiroth. But I was facing this team with my, I think it was like 50th in arena or something. I was facing this team with my Joom, Young Elda, and Ferris. And it was King Mont, Setia, and I think it was Sol. Almost has to have been Sol. And we came really close, like within one hit of me losing this match. I won on Young Elda's re-raise. And it just made me realize that if you can get enough healing power down on these new water teams, they really don't perform as well. They can't hang very well, and Joom is definitely an example of this. So with the new Sephiroth and complete like healing ceiling, if he could also throw in maybe some ways of breaking slash attack resistance, you know, allow KADAJ to break the defense, then he breaks the slash defenses, or and then you have another character like even Tifa to break the strike and unit attack resistances. So while KADAJ's kit is simple, he's the best way of breaking defenses in the game as of this point, at least physical defense. And for a lot of physical teams, he's going to be a pretty ideal partner. He combines his skills incredibly well with other single target focused units, but also, since he's not necessarily breaking single target, he also complements them in a way that they work well together, but like they work better with him. And I think that it would be really easy to see a future in which Sephiroth completes some part of this puzzle to where a team of either Tifa, KADAJ, and Sephiroth, or say like Ashen Mont, KADAJ, and Sephiroth, if you want to be even more bougie about it, could be like just an unstoppable presence and an unstoppable force. This would allow you to bypass the AoE shred, which honestly you can find for free on Veritas of the Wind, but it's hard to make him relevant these days. There's also a number of other things that were updated to the JP side, including a vision card. The agility's not as high as I wanted it to be. It's more like a luck heavy card, which I guess is cool. It's pretty general magic resistance, 42% luck, 20% magic resistance, and I want to say 12% agility, which I was hoping would be more, but for Greatsword, for Strike, and for Black Mage, if you don't have agility cards that work for you, this is an amazing one, and it's versatile enough that even though it is attack statted, I think it could work both for magical orientations or physical orientations of those teams. That being said, I really don't like the idea of pitying limited vision cards, but if you do, the Hollow VC bonus for this is going to boost accuracy in Arena, which is nice. And then finally we have a new weapon for Fola. This is going to be her signature weapon, which is going to boost her power up even further. 190 magic, 30 water attack, reduces physical damage taken by 15% when HP is above 70%, and also decreases HP by 15 on hit when her HP is above 70%. So as long as she can keep herself topped off and healed, she's going to be doing so much extra work and taking so much less physical damage. This is still not as strong as like what we saw with KADAJ and the human resistance, but it is a pretty strong form of resistance that unfortunately I think falls away too fast. Really, I think this could have been a little bit higher, the threshold could have been a little bit lower, the condition could have been removed entirely. especially considering that MA2s for Vega were giving him like 10% general damage resistance. You know, this could have been a little bit better, but the decrease AP is also, on the other hand, maybe what balances it, because this is so much stronger than the ability that we just saw on Tifa's signature equipment, which is crit conditional, and it only decreases that AP by, I think, 5 instead of 15. So this is kind of a bigger deal there. Anyways, all of that being said, thank you guys for tuning in. I'm Jackie Fox. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. That's the thing that's going to help me the most with YouTube. Also, leave a comment. Tell me what you think, who you're excited for. Vinju, I know you're excited for Kadaj, but tell me again. Seriously, I'll love the comment. I would love any comment that you guys would leave me, because that really helps me in the algorithm. But in addition to that, check out the link in the description. That's going to lead to other YouTube channels, podcasts, etc. Recently did one on the death of the internet. A bunch of different kind of intersecting theories about how the internet might implode and how we're seeing them start to play out. It's kind of weird, but it's a really fun, longer dive into some really weird tech news over the last year. But also, I have books. I recently got all of my issues updated. They are running fine now, so the latest edits are up. I'm really excited to have some of these books out there for the first time. I'm really excited to have a hardback out for the first time that looks really good. I really like the cover. I just really like the feel of it, and I would really appreciate it. That would help a lot more than, say, like donating to the channel or something, but that is also an option. You'll find links for that as well. It's all within the link tree. And with all of that being said, all that is left for me to say is that I'll see you in the next one.